back to another amazing episode of the best darn show on the internet, the Over Sharon Show. What's going on, Sharon? How are you today?
I'm good.
Awesome.
It's been
Yeah.
nice weather.
Oh yeah. It was a little warm here. Well, I say warm, like maybe in the 50s or 60s, but then the other night it was nice. It was like a mild night, and then I woke up the next day, it was cold and rainy, and it's been pretty chilly. I think it's supposed to get down into the 20s next week one night. So we're finally here. November's here. Um,
20s. Wow.
yeah,
We're
yeah,
getting to the 50s at night and like I think it's going to start getting into the 40s at night over here and that's cold. That's cold enough, I think.
yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
sometimes it gets in the 30s too. So,
Yeah, well, I think once it gets to a certain point of cold, it doesn't even matter anymore. You just like go out there and brave it, like once it's under freezing. It doesn't matter if it's like 0 or 10. It's just like it's cold. But I do have a quote today, so let me pull that up before we go too far. All right, today's quote, and look, I did a little artwork for the quote today. I figured
Oh, look at you.
yeah, I just slapped it on the picture we usually use right in the background. Today's quote is you have your let me try this again. You have your way, I have my way. As for the right way, the correct way, and the only way, it does not exist. Friedrich Nietzsche.
Did
Cool.
you send that one to me?
Yeah, I think
Or
on
did I send that one to
Instagram,
you?
because I just saw you replied to it on Instagram saying how that's awesome. So I think I might have sent it to you this time, but
Oh,
usually
okay.
I mean, we're just so good with our quotes, like we can never.
Yeah, I saw that. I was like, that's really good. So I feel like I shared it with you, but I'm not the one who peruses those. So maybe it was you who sent it to me.
Yeah, I follow that on the Nietzsche one and the Socrates, the Socrates one.
Yeah.
One other one. They're pretty cool. It's a good thing to have on Instagram when you're scrolling through, to see some goodness instead of all the craziness that's out there, I guess. Not that I follow a lot of crazy things, but Instagram is basically how I get my news. Not that I really want it. We even talked about this yesterday with Sarcastic Warlock. I was talking to him about things like I don't even care anymore. Like, so we were talking about levels of attention
Same
and
here.
how sometimes when you ignore something totally, you actually are even giving it attention. So now I'm at the point where I just kind of know, and I'm like, all right, yeah, that's cool. Like whatever.
Yeah.
Those people over there in that country, we all know who they are. They're up to it again, aren't they? As broad as we can. So yeah, no, that quote was perfect for the show. That's why I was like, yes, let's do it.
Well, I forgot to shuffle, so here I go.
All right, I'll check in on the chat while you shuffle. What's up, chat? How's it going? Thank you guys for coming to hang out. We got Joe in there, Joker's Redemption. We also have Joe Giuseppe, my friend who lives
Oh
here in
yeah, that's
Connecticut.
right.
What's going on? Spoons is in there. What's up, Spoons? How are you doing? Good to see you guys. Uh Sharon, you're in the chat. Good to see you. Oops, not that funny. I thought it might be better.
Let's see what I'm
Yeah,
good. This is ridiculous.
same card.
Yes.
Is this the third time in a row?
Yes, I think so. I mean, I'm pretty sure it's the same one, like endurance, right? 32.
That sounds really familiar. What's the wordage that goes with it? Like the sky above.
Thunder above, wind below.
Ooh,
Endurance.
thunder.
I
Well,
mean, this looks very familiar. So, shall
yeah.
I pull another one or shall we just
I mean,
keep?
I was just gonna say that maybe there's a message that one of us or somebody else
Okay.
watches the show, or yeah.
All
I mean,
right.
you
I'll
can
read.
read it quickly.
And this is crazy. I opened the book and I opened right to it. Like,
That's crazy.
that's crazy. So, this card wants to be read again, you guys.
I could
All right.
pull a card from the Thoth deck too and read because I have that book that we were the Mirror of the Soul. Oh wait, it's just on you. Hang on. I used this in the Terrible podcast for the last one because we were going over decks that we weren't really familiar with, but I was like, you know what, I have this book. Let's go over the Thoth deck, even though we covered it all. And you know, we can
Yeah.
use the book.
Yeah. I'll read the
Anyway,
intro this again and then you can pull a Thoth card. All
cool.
right. So it says endurance, thunder above, wind below. This is card number 32 of the I Ching. It says endurance is cultivated when determination is coupled with flexibility. Long distance runners must adapt to changing conditions while maintaining a strong sense of purpose. Two trees growing near each other bend and adapt to enhance each other's survival. A strong image of durability is the stable relationship of intimate partners that strikes a dynamic balance between involvement in the outside world and nourishment in the home. True endurance is not based on rigidity because endurance implies flexibility, not being locked in position. Only by adapting to change can we stay in the race. And only by deepening our sense of purpose can we call forth the strength to win it. Continuity is achieved through movement, not by keeping still. That which has ceased to grow is degrading toward death. Be actively changing, but stay strongly connected with your roots, your deepest thoughts and feelings. Well, whoever needed to hear that, I read it for you. And maybe that was for me, and I really need to look at this.
I like that part about the endurance not being rigid. Because if you think of endurance, you would think of something like rigidity or maybe stubborn, being stubborn or whatever, but
Yeah, true.
so true, right? That it's not.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah. I mean, like if you think of endurance runners, like do they must have to pace themselves somehow, right? They can't just like go full strength at 100%, 100% of the time.
Yeah, it's a good point. Like a marathoner.
Yeah.
Well, this is crazy because I almost used this card yesterday. I did ended up not going with it. Here, I'm just gonna pin my video now so we could let's see. Pins. Yeah, anyway, I was gonna use it's the eight or sorry, yeah, the eight of discs. And I pulled four cards. I picked four cards. This was gonna be one that I was gonna use, and then I didn't use that. Um, and then right as I was grabbing the deck, I saw it and I was thinking, I'm like, that'd be a good card to use, but I shuffled it anyway. And then this is the card that I pulled. So I guess it was meant to be. Now I don't know if it'll hang on, let's see. There we go. Nope. That would be cool if it just stuck to my head and then I could it's like Indian poker. All right. The eight of discs. I don't know how long this is gonna last everybody, but Sun in Virgo, following internal and external richness, wisdom, development, careful prudence, or carefulness and prudence. I really like this book, especially yesterday. We read four different cards out of it. The tree unfolds its wealth of blooms. It's time of flowering. It's a time of flowering that relates to internal and external richness. On all four levels of being, long hidden abilities and possibilities are becoming visible. The number eight stands for harmony, adjustment, balance. C card eight, adjustment. As you unfold an equal measure of on all levels of being, a deep sense of psychic equilibrium develops. This in turn affects your dealings on the material and impersonal places. And interpersonal places. I have my contacts in. Can't read so well when they're in. Particularly at times of multifaceted flowering, extremes and excesses should be avoided. Internal flowering is a delicate process which occurs in stillness. It is a gift to handle lovingly and with great care. Every bloom on the tree is shielded by a large leaf, a symbol for protection and prudence. Also remember that the tree is just beginning to bloom. It is not the time for harvesting or for giving out the newly developing wealth. In order to maintain the internal balance, special attention must be paid on the external level to clarity, order, and beauty. In the context of beginning an undertaking, this card includes a warning. Before making a new start, be sure that health and finances are abundant enough to allow for success. All right. That's a good little bit of wisdom, I guess, anytime, right?
Mm-hmm.
Cool. All right. So now you got something new and something that we may have talked about before, everybody. So there you go.
And what was the card again? Because I was so distracted.
It was the 8 of discs.
Thank you.
Yes, I just put it back in the middle of the deck, but it's the one with
Eight
it looked like a
of
tree with a bunch
discs.
of fruit on it. When I stuck to my
Cool.
forehead, let's see if it's still kicking around. Yeah, I slid it back in really
No,
good.
don't worry about it.
All right, here it is.
Oh, there it is. Cool. Yeah, that's cool.
It's like a tree.
8 of discs. That's earthy, obviously, because
Yeah.
it looks like a tree and everything, but discs are abundance, wealth, money, family, all the stuff you talked about that I was trying to pay attention to.
Mhm.
I was just a little bit distracted.
Oh, I hear you. What's up, Blue Kachina? What's going on?
Oh, yeah, yeah. Welcome, Blue.
Cool. All right. Well, today we're going to continue our series on the Tao Te Ching. We're going to cover verses 19 and 20. And I'm really excited about it because I love the Tao. So without any further ado, without any further ado, let me share the Tao.
And I will say that verse 20 is a little interesting, but
Yes.
we'll get there when we get there.
Stick around, everybody. Very interesting. So here are the slides that the lovely Sharon created for our show. Here we go. Verse 19, Stephen Mitchell from 1988. Throw away holiness and wisdom, and people will be 100 times happier. Throw away morality and justice, and people will do the right thing. Throw away industry and profit, and there won't be any thieves. If these three aren't enough, just stay at the center of the circle and let all things take their course.
Mm,
Looks like this
mm.
is the shortest out of all of them, too, right?
It is. It is. Isn't that funny?
Yeah.
He really whittled it down. All right. So Dwight Goddard, 1919, verse 19. Oh, that's funny.
Oh, wow. Look at that. Look at these
All the
synchronicities.
19s today.
Sync
Um,
bound. Oops.
calls this return to simplicity. Abandon the show of saintliness and relinquish excessive prudence. Then people will benefit 100-fold. Abandon ostentatious benevolence and conspicuous righteousness. Then people will return to the primal virtues of filial piety and parental affection. We've seen that filial word before.
We looked it up.
Yeah. Abandon cleverness and relinquish gains. Then thieves and robbers will disappear. Here are three fundamentals on which to depend, wherein culture is insufficient. Therefore, let all men hold to that which is reliable, namely, recognize simplicity, cherish purity, reduce one's possessions, diminish one's desires.
That's a lot compared to the other verse.
Mm-hmm.
Stan Rosenthal looks like he even has a little more. And Aleister Crowley looks like it's pretty brief too. I like it.
Mm-hmm.
Right, so we got a little rhythm going here. Stan Rosenthal, 1984, returning to naturalness. It is better merely to live one's life, realizing one's potential, rather than wishing for sanctification. He who lives in yeah, here is that word again, filial piety and love has no need of ethical teaching. When cunning and profit are renounced, stealing and fraud will disappear. But ethics and kindness and even wisdom are insufficient in themselves. Better by far to see the simplicity of raw silk's beauty and the uncarved block, to be one with oneself and with one's brother. It is better by far to be one with the Tao, developing selflessness, tempering desire, removing the wish, but being compassionate.
Mm. Aleister Crowley, verse 19, he entitles this Returning to the Purity of the Current. If we forgot our statesmanship and our wisdom, it would be 100 times better for the people. If we forgot our benevolence and our justice, they would become again like sons, folk of goodwill. If we forgot our machines and our business, there would be no knavery. These new methods despised the olden way, inventing fine names to disguise their baneness. But simplicity in the doing of the will of every man would put an end to vain ambitions and desires.
Is that like connive? That wouldn't make sense, right?
No, I
Okay.
don't think so, but I can look it up because I have dictionary pulled up.
Dictionary.com.
It is dictionary.com. Action or practice characteristic of a knave, and a knave is an unprincipled, untrustworthy, or dishonest person.
Haha. You dirty knave.
Knavery
It's too close to slave. We got to be careful. Call them a knave, not a slave.
second the second the second definition is unprincipled, untrustworthy, or dishonest dealing, trickery. So there you have it. Knavery.
Nice. Bad pirate, somebody said. Nice. All right. Let me bring back this up and we'll break down the first verse of each first part of each verse. So the Steve Mitchell 1988 from the first part, throw away holiness and wisdom, and people will be 100 times happier. Throw away morality and justice, and people will do the right thing. Throw away industry and profit, and there won't be any thieves. What do you think, Sharon?
Well, I see it kind of as when you make a rule, people tend to want to not follow the rule. You know, it's like when you're a kid and you're told do not, do not, do not, then you're like, okay, when can I start? You know, like,
When do I start? Tomorrow? Great.
um, it just it's tempting to people, I guess, to be like, oh, I can't. Oh, you want to see me try? So, the whole like making of rules and telling people how to be. I mean, I think we talked about this last week, or not last week, but last time we did. And I don't remember when the last, I don't know what day it is.
I
It
think it
feels
was
like it's
2
been,
weeks ago on a Wednesday, right? Because we had Joe last Wednesday.
yeah, you're right. So the last time we did the Tao, we talked about something like this, and it was, now I lost my train of thought, but
Oh,
it'll
we
come
were
back to
talking
me.
about rules. When you give people rules, they want to automatically break them. And you said we talked about something like
Yeah.
that 2 weeks ago.
Um, yeah, no, I lost it, but do you have any thoughts on this?
Well, that definitely explains the second part, like the industry and profit, or maybe the morality and justice thing. I think that explains that one pretty well. With the holiness and wisdom, it's kind of that thing too, but I also think that um like in an age, like it says in the past verses where it was, I'm trying to think
Or
exactly.
okay, the 4 ages. I think that's where I
Yeah,
was going to.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It's kind of
That's
like,
exactly where I was going. In a time of that we're living right now, we kind of have to tell people, but like in a golden age, you wouldn't have to tell people. You could just throw all those things away and just be.
yeah, it's like we need these rules so we could tell who's better, right? You could put somebody on a pedestal and someone in a pit, right? So you have this holiness and wisdom. So it's like, oh no, this guy's more holy and this guy's more wise. It's kind of like judgment, right? It comes down to
Yeah.
judgment. Without judgment, it wouldn't matter. But since these times rely so heavily on judgment, people are engaging in a lot of judgment. I think that's what happens. Like it reminds me of the verse from the Bhagavad Gita, what we that we've talked about a bunch of times in Sarcastic, who I had on my show yesterday. Go check that out, everybody. It was a really good conversation. He likes to bring this up a lot too, where it says that holy texts are to a holy man as waters are to a floodplain, to a person who really gets it. So you don't need any of this wisdom and holiness if you get it and you're just living by the golden rule, or if you're just living in accordance with the Tao, we'll say, because we're talking about the Tao. How you like me now? So it's when you put up rules or if you set standards for people, you're kind of setting them up to fail. You're just telling them that, oh, some of you guys aren't going to live up to these rules, so some of you guys are going to fail.
Mm.
But it does sound very new agey as well, and I could see how, especially when it says throwaway industry and profit, to be like, what are you, some kind of communist? Like I can already hear people saying that. And I think
Yeah.
that it's more about
If
it's
they didn't have that concept of being so greedy, you wouldn't have thieves. I mean, there was another verse in the Tao that we talked about before, and I don't remember which one it was, but it talked something like this about like if you do this, that's where you get thieves.
yeah, yeah, I know what you're talking about. I can't remember how it goes exactly, but yeah, that's kind of exactly it. And then also you have to remember that they're not telling you to do this. It's not like thou shalt throw away holiness and wisdom.
No,
It's just
no,
saying,
no.
listen, if you throw this away, this is what happens. If you do this, this is what will happen. So I think instead of like a commandment or some kind of rule that the Tao is
Hmm.
saying, it's just letting you know the opposite of it. It's kind of like an apophatic thing, right? It's like, well, you're worried
Yeah.
about thieves or you're worried about people not being happy. Well, this is why they're not happy, because they have all these rules, because people treat them like children and so they act like children. It's kind of like that one thing, you treat somebody and you raise them
Mm.
a certain way in a materialistic way. Um, but I'm glad that we talked about all this now, because now we could kind of go through the other verses and see what other insights we can gain off of these statements. So let me pull this one back up.
Yeah. All right. So the Dwight Goddard uh first part of verse 19 says, and it's entitled Return to Simplicity. So I mean, I like that because even Stephen Mitchell's is coming to that like simple conclusion of just have a simple life. You don't need all these rules. You don't need somebody to tell you if you're holy or not. You don't need to decide if someone's holy or not. That's just my words, but anyway, Dwight Goddard, abandon the show of saintliness. I love it. And relinquish excessive prudence, and then people will benefit 100-fold. Abandon ostentatious benevolence and conspicuous righteousness. Then people then people will return to the primal virtues of filial piety and parental affection. I feel like we've read this. Does the Tao repeat itself a little bit?
It kind of echoes itself sometimes. It's not
Okay.
exactly the same word, phrasing, but they will use like this whole filial piety and all this stuff. And I think it's because they're really trying to hit it from every angle, you know.
Okay. Abandon cleverness and relinquish gains, and then thieves and robbers will disappear. So again, it's like Brandon was saying with the Stephen Mitchell, it's like you got to think of it in the sense of like, if you abandon the show of saintliness and relinquish excessive prudence, then people will benefit a hundredfold. It's not saying do this, thou shalt. It's just kind of like using examples to show you how to live more simply. And isn't that what we say at the end of our show these days?
Yeah, every week we say that. It's like, right? And I like this version too because it uses more words, and sometimes more words are bad, but this time it's really good because it's talking about the show of saintliness, the
Mm,
excessive prudence, like ostentatious benevolence and
mm,
conspicuous righteousness. And we all, if anyone's ever been involved in like some kind of Christian cult, like speaking in tongues, whatever, whatever you do, I'm not disparaging it, but you get it because you see a lot of this ostentatious benevolence and conspicuous righteousness, right? It's like people want to be known for how good they are.
mm, mm. And what was I going to say? Conspicuous righteousness, ostentatious benevolence. Yeah, like this reminds me of the scripture in the Bible that says, do not do your works before men, to be seen of them. Like, don't give to the poor and then like let everybody see that you're giving to the poor. Like, don't do it because everyone's looking at you so they can look at you and praise you. But he says, do your works like that. Like, don't let your right hand know what your left hand's doing type thing, and you don't have to be showy. You can do it anonymously, you know, because why do you need praise,
Well, yeah, that's a great question. And I'll bring it back to us for this. It's like a lot of times that goes along with somebody who has self-esteem issues. And I know this because I have worked on a lot of my self-esteem issues. And a lot of times when you get your validation from exterior sources, you feel the need to do showy things to show people how good you are so then they could tell you how good they are so then you could feel good about yourself. So it's kind of like that thing. It's like, if you're just going to do it, just do it. You don't have to sit there and say how awesome you are and tell us how awesome you are, you know what I mean? Like just go
Mm-hmm.
do it and you'll be fine. And I
Yeah.
think that's where the true rewards come in.
Yeah.
But
And
oh,
the,
go ahead.
I was just gonna say the Bible even says like something about like your father in heaven sees what you're doing. Like you don't have to be showy and like other people have to see you or anything because God in heaven sees you and knows your heart, basically your intent, your intentions.
That's right. So if you want to donate to the Oversharing Show, just do it quietly and don't tell anybody. No, the reason I said that was because what I was gonna say was, sometimes I think though it's not like it's a bad thing to donate where people can see that you're doing it. It's really just about your intentions and it's about being conscious of your behavior and why you're doing it and being conscious with it. Like talked about this yesterday with sarcastic, which is great because this is something we always talk about, which is like doing it till you're done, right? So we talked about
Mm-hmm.
that whole concept of just whatever it is you're doing, just fucking do it and enjoy it. But the other good thing about perhaps donating where people can see or helping people where people can see is that you're actually setting a good example too. So if you're doing it in that way and you want people to see you, you could set an example. You'd be like, look at, I'm helping these people or whatever it is. So, you can help too. And then sometimes through your own example, people see it and then want to copy that, or it just gives them the idea to do it. So it's not like we're telling people to just be anonymous donors to everything. And if it's not like we're saying if you show your donations, you're a terrible person. It's just about why you're doing the certain.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I love that point. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah, it's because it goes by what we always say in the Oversharing Show. It's not really typically behavior. It's hard to like nail down certain behavior and say this behavior is bad, right? Or this is good.
Right.
Um,
Right. It's all based on intent.
Well, yep. And oh, you know what? I wanted to shout out. This is our 111th episode, everybody. This is the
That's
111th
right.
episode, and today is 11/9, which is an anagram for 9/11. Isn't that great?
I will, in the words of J.R.R. Tolkien, I will say it is our 11st episode.
Yeah, there you go. We're gonna have a party
11
later.
everyone.
That's right. 11/1. I'm so excited. Maybe we'll pull out a ring later and disappear. That would be cool.
I have a Lord of the Rings deck.
Oh yeah, I got mine right here too. All right, let's do this. Share the screen. All right, I'll go down to the 1984 Stan Rosenthal version, which is entitled "Returning to Naturalness." It is better merely to live one's life, realizing one's potential, rather than wishing for sanctification. Sanctification. He who lives in filial piety and love has no need of ethical teaching. When cunning and profit are renounced, stealing and fraud will disappear. And I think so far this version nails it as far as explaining it clearly, and which is great because this is the one that we deemed the swords or the air version of the tarot that we're covering. So it's great because it doesn't talk about anything about getting rid of like holiness and all that stuff. It just says it's better to live your own life, realizing your own potential rather than wishing for, some kind of
Mm,
sanctification.
mm.
And then the next verse where he's like, he who lives this way in filial piety and love has no need for ethical teaching. So it's
Wow.
basically telling you that these things can't be taught, like it's either the way you see the world, right? It's either your worldview. And it's the same thing when we start talking about like woke raping or whatever, right? You can't tell somebody about the moon or JFK or, 11/9 backwards if they're not ready to see it. It's the same thing. You can't just make a rule and then all of a sudden people will be like, okay. I mean, maybe people will look at like what happened in 2020. I'm sure a lot of people went along with the nonsense that didn't agree with it, but it wasn't true, right? It wasn't like they were happy about it and excited. So, uh, yeah, it's either they know it or they don't know it. Either they know love, and I'm not saying like if somebody doesn't have filial piety or love, like they can't learn to get that. But what I'm saying is like you can't teach it to them, right? Nobody can teach it to them. They have to have like a Donald.
It's like
Like,
Jesus said, you have to be born again.
yeah,
And
yeah,
it's like,
you really do.
and it's like he said too, like it's the Holy Spirit within you that will reveal it to you. It can't just be, you can't be rope raped into it. He didn't say that. But he says the Holy Spirit,
He might have.
it must be revealed to you by the Holy Spirit.
Yeah, exactly what I was gonna say. I said Donald because I wanted to say Scrooge, but then I almost said Scrooge McDuck and I almost said Donald
Donald Duck.
Duck. But think of Ebenezer Scrooge, right? Scrooge McDuck. Ebenezer Scrooge in that whole story, he was just this piece of crap apparently, and then he had to be visited by these three ghosts that showed him the past, present, future. So he had this wake up moment, and then he just goes through the streets throwing money. Nobody could go up to him and be like, "Hey, Ebenezer, you're a tightwad." Like people are gonna think that they're gonna start calling you that word that begins with J. So stop it. No, he had to literally have like a experience with paranormal beings to show him his life, right?
Mm.
His mistakes or whatever for him to see him again. So yeah, it's the same thing. You can't tell Scrooge to go donate to the poor. You have to let him figure it out on his own or with the help of three ghosts. You like my
Scrooge
little knife?
McDuck. Donald Duck.
Yeah, I almost said Donald. That's why I was like
Trump. Donald Duck. Scrooge McDuck.
Scrooge
Ebenezer
McTrump.
Scrooge.
uh,
Oh God. Oh
Donald
yeah.
Trump. Yeah, I wonder if wow, that's funny. Donald Duck, you can make him like a Trump, the Trump character. Sure.
That's
KKK.
funny.
I could talk. All right, there we go. So let's focus in here on the Aleister Crowley version. Maybe we can.
Yeah. All right. So he calls this returning to the purity of the current. And Stan Rosenthal calls it returning to naturalness. And then we have Dwight Goddard calls it return to simplicity. So I like Dwight Goddard's Return to Simplicity, but Stan's is nice too. Alistair's he's got always got to be a little bit esoteric. So you got the purity of the current. The current, like as in the current of water, the current era, the current time. I don't know. We'll
Or
see.
electricity.
Or the current of electricity, of the
Mm,
ether, of the realm. I'm just kidding.
yeah.
All right. If we forgot our statesmanship and our wisdom, he's using the if.
Yeah.
So it's that's the helpful part there. If we forgot our statesmanship and our wisdom, it would be 100 times better for the people. Now he says 100, which is funny.
Oh,
If we for if we forgot our benevolence and our justice, they would become again like sons, folk of good will. If we forgot our machines and our business, there would be no knavery. And that again is like trickery, shall we say.
there's a lot of knavery going on in this certain country. We won't mention the name. It's Peru, everybody. I'm sorry, it's Peru. I'll say it here. No, I'm just kidding. It's not Peru. There's another country. I like this. The one thing I could say if Aleister was here would be like, hey, Aleister, you started off great with the if, but then you made a statement. Wouldn't it be better if you said, if we forgot our statesmanship and wisdom, wouldn't it be 100 times better for the people? But I guess to
Mm.
to kind of you know, enunciate what the Tao is trying to say here, then you kind of have to say, this is what they're saying, right? They're telling you.
Yeah.
And the words are great too. I like the oops, I scrolled down.
Statesmanship?
Yeah, the statesmanship and our
Is
wisdom. Because
that what? Go ahead.
I was just gonna say statesmanship, think about what it is at the end of the day. Really, it's just
Is it like patriotism or like,
it could be like that too, but I'm looking at it in the context of like thinking we need to rule over other people and tell them what to do,
oh,
right? Like
okay.
statecraft. And if you think about it, state, right? What is it? It's a state of mind. It's which
Mm.
government is what? Mind control. Anyone we all know. We've all seen Mark Bassio, right? We all know. So that's kind of what it breaks down to. But if we forget the state, what's he even called? Stateliness or statesmanship, right? So it's this thing which is it's a craft of that people perfect where they can control their minds. And again, we talk about on the show where we're not even mad at these people because the people who are practicing statecraft and perfecting it, because there's a lot of people out there who need it, and if not, it would be chaos out there, right? So we don't know the answer. We're just saying that the answer lies within. Figure it out for yourself, right? And then
Mhm.
you could live in heaven here right on earth, right? When other people next to you might even be living on in like a hell on earth of their own creation. You could just be like
Mm,
buzzing along.
indeed.
Cool. So let me bring it back to, I love the knavery. That's great.
Mhm.
Go back up to the second
If we
part.
forget our machines and our business, interesting. Reminds me of the Industrial Revolution.
Yeah, it's funny too, the word business, it's just busyness.
Yeah,
For what sake?
right.
Why are we so busy? It's like, is this
Mhm.
kind of escapism that's going on here?
Mhm.
And it's not like
Mhm.
Sharon and I are against capitalism or whatever, but the ideas that are inherent behind them really just lead to materialism. And that's really what we're trying
Oh,
to
yeah.
attack here, right? Is the materialism and the materialistic point of view. And we did a whole episode on that, everybody, which was, if I might say so, an amazing episode because it really highlights what's at the key of all these divisions and these arguments and struggles that are going on. It's just like, oh, do you think it's a material thing or this is all real and you could touch it? And I mean, I guess we can perceive that we could touch it, but you think this is all there is. There's nothing else other than this material realm, right? So if we could just let go of all that stuff and what else does he say? Oh, hang on.
That was episode 60 about materialism.
Oh, awesome. if we forget our machines. We don't want to rage against our machines because then we'll need an experimental medical serum to see them in concert. Everybody, rage against the machine.
And then we won't be raging against them anymore.
Yeah, you just forget the machines, like just forget it unless you really need it. Amazing. All right, so I'm gonna scroll back up here and I will share the screen again. Lovely. All right. This short and sweet. If these three aren't enough, just stay at the center of the circle and let all things take their course. I love this little piece in here. I think that you could just take this
Yes.
piece and give it to people and not even have to read the Tao, just explain to them what staying at the center of the circle means and let things run their course. There's so much that's said in this tiny little, paragraph or whatever, a couple sentences.
Yeah. It says basically everything is perfect. Everything's okay. Everything's going to be okay.
Yeah. And if you think of yourself in a circle, say you're like standing on a giant plate and there's like it's only supported in the middle so it can move around. If you go to the edges, the
By
balance
a
is going to
pole, dare you say?
by a pole exactly. But if you go to the edges of this circle, it's going to tilt and tip and you're going to lose your balance. So basically he's just saying it's all about balance, right? It's all about what the Tao is, the yin and the yang, and just stay at the center of that circle no matter what and let things take their course. So it's about not fighting the current or the force. It's about going with the flow and then seeing what's going on. Like I was telling Sharon earlier today, I got to go to a assembly, my niece's school. She's 9. And she goes to a Catholic school. Oh, dude, it's crazy. It was School of Mary Magdalene, Saint Mary Magdalene or something with an S, Mary Magdalene School, and the symbol is like an S and then two N's on top of each other and then another S. And I'm just like, oh yeah. But I had to drive about 45 minutes and I went to my brother's house first, who is my niece's father. And we were going to drive from there together from the school. And on the way, he ran out of gas about a mile from his house. So he had to walk in a light rain. But of course, I'm always prepared. I had like all wool on, I had my
Wool
winter
shoes.
jacket, but yeah, I was good to go. So we walked back, got my car, drove there, and we were a little late. And the whole time he was pretty upset about it, at himself, not at me. But I kept telling him, like, don't worry about it. It'll all work itself out. And on the way there, which is so crazy, we have to take a little bit of like a expressway highway there. And there was a little bit of a slowdown. There's like a cop, there's lights, and we're like, oh man, there's like a big merge. So we're trying to figure out if we should go one way or another because we're already a few minutes late. And when we get up to the front, there's a bear on the side of the road. Somebody hit a bear, like a little, well, I mean, it wasn't probably that little, but somebody hit a bear and it had just happened. So like maybe if we didn't run out of gas, that could have been us. We could have been affected by it. We could have gotten into a car accident because of it. So I just take things as they come. And as I told Sharon, we just kind of walked in the back doors of the assembly, right from the parking lot. Just, I love these schools because I've worked at a couple of public schools and it's like Fort Knox. It's crazy. But this one, we kind of walked in and my brother was a little nervous because everyone was already there. And I'm like, I don't even care. And then all the vets were talking, I guess, in a line. They had a microphone, and the last one had just talked. I walked in, the principal's like, oh, are you here for this? And she hands me a microphone. And I'm like, oh, this is great. And I just started talking on the microphone about the Marines and that stuff. And I told the story about how I was like I was a mechanic, but I was more I was a way better comedian, and I told them how they wanted me to stay in because I would made everyone laugh. So it was pretty fun. But yeah, you just kind of go with the flow when things happen because remember, it's not your plan, right? You can make all the plans that you want. And I'm not telling you to not have a plan, but sometimes when like forces of nature act against you, there's really nothing you can do. You just have to go with the flow. Now, running out of gas isn't exactly a force of nature, but it was out of my control because my brother had already, set that up. So but it worked out and I just went with it and I wasn't going to let myself get upset or flustered or even embarrassed. I even said, I'm like, sorry, we ran out of gas, and then I just boom, went right on to the next thing. I'm like, where's Laura? I made sure I embarrassed her. I pointed to her in the crowd, made her wave. So it was a good time. Anyway, yeah, so that nice, concise little
Go
thing
with the
about
flow.
go with the flow, stay at the center of the circle, right? And let's see. what Dwight Goddard has to say about it.
Dwight Goddard says, here are three fundamentals on which to depend, wherein culture is insufficient. I believe he's talking about the three things that he mentioned above.
Mm-hmm.
Therefore, let all men hold to that which is reliable, namely, and then he says all these cool things here: recognize simplicity, cherish purity, reduce one's possessions, diminish one's desires. And again, as Brandon and I have talked about, and you can go back to us,
Yes.
we're not talking, we're not trying to tell people what to do, because we always say, you got to do things till you're done. So it's not about like, oh, you need to like become minimalist ASAP. It has to be an internal desire for you. It has to be like, you know what? I am so done with all this extra stuff that I have. I don't know what to do with myself. I'm hoarding, I'm doing this, I'm doing that. Like I'm sick and tired of it. It has to stop, and you have to do it yourself. You can't no one can force anybody to do anything. I mean, they can try, but then it's not helpful, right? It has to be a change within. And that's, to me, that's what things like the Bible says, and Jesus says, you must be born again. That is not a thing that someone can force you to do. And now that I think about it, that makes sense, because like I never understood that. I never understood that verse. And now that I'm thinking about it right now, it makes sense. It's no one can force someone to have a baby, right? Like, and you can't go force yourself to have to be born again, naturally, right? So no one can force this. That's why it just has to happen within you, like a spiritual rebirth, basically. It has to happen.
Yeah, and this is something we kind of talked about before, where we were like, maybe we can start a business where we give people near-death experiences, right? And I think that's kind of what baptism used to be when they would baptize people in the river. They would
Oh,
probably
like a drowning.
hold them down and drown them, and then maybe
And
they
then
kind of experience
they'd have like what is it called when you have a
psychedelics.
DMT? Yeah.
Yeah.
Like they'd probably like almost DMT out, and then they're like, okay, now what? Now how do you see life now?
And that though is also important too, because the people, well, generally the people who were back then were getting baptized in the river, they were asking for it, right? They see Jesus or whatever, or just a group of people living a great way, and they're like, I want to live this way. And they just couldn't see it from their
Yeah, and
point.
they're like,
So they're
I
like,
need it
right,
to be spontaneously done right now.
exactly. Right.
Please help a brother out.
Yeah. Drown me, almost kill me, throw me off a building. And it's cool too, because a lot of native cultures, you can even say like Native American or whatever, they have different ceremonies or practices where people do this. Like they'll even sometimes they dance all day or day and night without eating and fast and all this stuff. And they have these different psychedelic experiences. Some people even like hang from like, they put like, they would put hooks in their skin and kind of hang or whatever. And all this other stuff I've seen from Native American cultures. But, or even think of like a vision quest where people would go out into the woods for a bunch of days with no food and they'd have to kind of survive on their own. Or even think of Jesus going into the wilderness, right? 40 days to
Mm-hmm.
fast. It's the same kind of idea. And I think in this culture, and the reason why I wanted to bring all this up, because in that verse, it says, wherein culture is insufficient. So basically, it's telling you that our culture, or, if you need the Tao, then obviously the culture is insufficient if you need this guideline. Because if you didn't, then nobody would even talk about the Tao or the Bible or the Bhagavad Gita, right? We already knew we wouldn't have to look at all these holy books. So it's letting us know that our culture is insufficient because we really have none of that. That's kind of why I joined the Marine Corps. I needed some like rite of passage experience where any different like maybe heathen beliefs or like I said native beliefs or whatever they are, it's probably built in and baked in where people go through these experiences and then they see what's really important. Because when you have a near death experience, a lot of times that happens. Look at, we were just saying Ebenezer Scrooge, right? Same thing. He went through this experience and he saw what was really important. It wasn't hoarding all this gold. It was more about loving everybody, I guess.
Yeah, community, love, sharing,
Right.
giving and accepting in return.
Tiny Tim.
Tiny Tim.
Shout out to Tiny Tim. What's up, IO Walks in the chat? How you doing? Perfect orange circle. There you go. And Joker's Joe's always got some good things to say. Practice of surrendering to what's uncomfortable. Yes, exactly. Surrender is a huge one. That word kept coming up. I recorded a episode of the Terrible podcast yesterday, which is just audio right now, guys. And we release it every Tuesday. Go to terrible.com. But the word surrender kept coming up when we were reading through this tarot book. It's amazing at what it's, and it kind of falls back into what we're saying with like going with the flow, because you can't go with the
Mhm.
flow unless you surrender to it. So very important.
Indeed.
Yep. And Joe says, if you can let go of something that intense
That
bothers.
intense. Yeah.
Oh, go ahead, you read it.
No, no. Sorry.
If you can let go of something that intense bothering you, negative emotions are a breeze. Yeah, there you go. It's about surrender and letting go. Let it go. It's funny how the Disney movie Frozen, and I don't even, they probably had sequels, but that's like the big song, right? Let it go,
Mhm.
let it go,
That
and they
is.
sing it, and they just let it go, but people just they
Yeah.
don't
People don't
understand,
want
right?
to let it go.
Yeah, and they don't want to let it go too, for sure. Yes,
Mhm.
they sing it because it's true, right? And it resonates with them because it's true, but they might not live it in their everyday life.
They might not comprehend it enough. Yeah.
Yeah. All right, let's get back to this. Here we go. Okay, so Stan Rosenthal, the 1984 version, the second part is, but ethics and kindness and even wisdom are insufficient in themselves. Better by far to see the simplicity of raw silk's beauty in the uncarved block, to be one with oneself and with one's brother. It is better by far to be one with the Tao, developing selflessness, tempering desire, removing the wish, but being compassionate.
Hmm.
And yeah, it's huge because he's talking about all these things, wisdom, kindness, ethics. It's like nobody, they're not in that within themselves. They're not what's that? It's better to just kind of live simply, right? You don't have to worry about reading the whole Bible or memorizing all the rules or knowing what you should do in the moment. It's like it's already in you. You have a conscious, right? Like you have this voice inside you, an intuition. It's more about being true to that, true to yourself, your own voice, cultivating that intuition so you can listen to it when it speaks and you'll be fine. It's like we all know, kids already know what they're not supposed to do. You don't need to give them rules. They probably know that they shouldn't be eating a bunch of cookies or whatever it is. So, yeah.
Yeah. Better by far to see the simplicity of raw silk's beauty and the uncarved block. What do you think about that? Like
Um,
the,
Go
go
ahead.
ahead.
I was going to say that. So, if you think about silk or an uncarved block of wood, people like to see the potential in them. They like to see, oh, I can make this silk into an awesome silk dress, or this uncarved block, we can carve it into something great. But I think here they're telling you to just grasp the simplicity of it instead of trying to say what it could be or trying to look at the potentiality. It's just like, no, focus on the simpleness right now.
Yeah, and it's funny that reminds me because I didn't really know what silkworm stuff looks like. And there's there's a lot of videos on Telegram that you see and stuff, and who knows, they've probably been repurposed from TikTok and all that stuff. But I don't know if you've ever seen it, but it's like the guy takes the silk from many silkworms, and he does all kinds of processes to it, and he washes it, uh and he puts it on a some kind of loom type thing, and he stretches it, and he does all these things to it. And you would never, like, looking at the silk the way it is, you would never know that it would end up looking like it does in a beautiful like scarf or a dress. It's crazy. all the work that goes to make the silk become the end product.
Well, that makes it an even better example then, because a lot of people, I know I was like this when I came across a lot of this knowledge. I was like, oh, I want to be, this is the person I want to be. And I was, if you think about it, I was just raw silk at that time. So it's better to just focus on where you are instead of trying to like look way into the future and trying to mold it and force it into place. You just kind of let it happen. Because like you were saying before, the same way we can't make people do things, you can't really make yourself be something that you're not. Say you have a problem with
Ahead of
drinking.
its time.
Yeah, ahead of its time too. And say you have an issue with drinking alcohol and you want to quit, but you only want to quit because everyone around you keeps telling you it's bad. And, but you're having a good time. So you're like, well, I guess I'll just quit to please everybody else. But then
It's
you
not going to
might,
be the real reason. Yeah. You're
yeah,
still going to want to come back.
you got to see it for yourself. And I've always said that, it's not whether you drink a bunch or you quit drinking. Sometimes you could relearn how to drink healthy amounts,
Mm.
like,
Hmm.
so with the proper frame of mind, I think
Yeah,
that could be achieved. And that's kind of what they're hinting at here, I believe.
absolutely.
All
I
right.
love that.
Thank you. So true, though. That's why this Tao is great. There's so many layers, onions and onions of layers.
That's like Shrek. Shrek.
Yeah, exactly.
Um, all right. Well, I want to just go back to the Stan Rosenthal thing because it says removing the wish. What do you think that means? Like, is
Yeah,
it
totally.
tempering desire, removing the wish, like the wish to like be X, Y, Z, whatever it is that you've been looking at? Like, I want to be exactly like this, like letting that go. Is that what that
Yeah,
means?
I think we can use that for sure as an example because we were just, that's what I was going to say. We were just saying that would be perfect
Mhm.
because you have this wish or you have these desires, right, to be a certain way, but they're saying it's better to just be one with the Tao, like soak in these ideas, develop selflessness, temper your desire, remove the wish, but stay compassionate. So, and you just kind of move one step at a time this way, as opposed to trying to, warp other places like you would in like Super Mario Brothers, where you can go down the pipe and you end up somewhere way far ahead. It's like, no, no, you got to do this
Dun
one
dun
step at
dun
a
dun
time.
dun dun.
Yeah, do. Don't get me started. But yeah, that's exactly I think what they're talking about here.
Cool.
That's how that's how I
See it.
comprehend it. Yeah, there you go. See it.
Let's see. Aleister Crowley. Okay, second part of verse 19, Aleister Crowley. These new methods despised the olden way. Ooh, inventing fine names to disguise their baneness. But simplicity in the doing of the will of every man. There's too many in the of the but simplicity in the doing of the will of every man would put an end to vain ambitions and desires. All right. Well, that olden way, let's look up the word baneness just because I like doing that.
Yeah, it's good to when you come across a word that you don't know to look it up. I do that a lot when I'm reading. I'm inferring here though that what they mean is their baneness. Well, yeah, let's look it up so we can put it in proper context. But the way I'm looking at it now is it's kind of like, the new ways, the new methods would probably is what he means by like statesmanship and wisdom and benevolence and justice, all
Mhm.
these things. If you just go
Yeah,
by the old
machines,
way,
business, busyness,
yeah, busyness. We just the old way, man, which was like just be cool. Like,
simplicity. Yeah.
yeah, it's funny. Here, I like to, I quote all kinds of people, no matter who they are. But let's quote Joe Rogan. And I used to listen to Joe Rogan a lot. I don't anymore, but way back in the day, he would always say, if there's only two people on an island, are you going to lock one of them up for smoking weed? It doesn't make sense. And it's the same thing. It's the old way when things were simpler, when there was less people. I mean, there could have been times where there was more people in this realm. I'm not trying to say like, we're at the peak right now, but you go back to when it's simpler, right? You don't need all these rules and talking of righteousness and justice and all this stuff. It's like, no, we just act cool, man. Just be fucking cool. Don't be a dick.
Yeah, and I like how Jeremiah sarcastic warlock says, he says, be excellent to each other. I
Yeah,
love that.
party on.
Yes.
Exactly.
Party on, Wayne.
Party on, Garth. I said that yesterday at the end of the episode. That's great.
And share on,
Yes, and share
most
on.
importantly.
That's right.
All right. The bane is a noun, a person or thing that ruins or spoils. Second definition, a deadly poison, often used in combination, as in the names of poisonous plants, wolfsbane, henbane.
Mm.
Third definition is death, destruction, or ruin. And a fourth obsolete definition is that which causes death or destroys life.
We'll probably be going with the obsolete
Isn't that
definition.
funny?
Yeah.
Because wouldn't it be because it's so old? Not that it's so old, but you know how words, change so quickly these days.
Well, yeah,
So,
when you say Bane now, people think of Batman, like the bad
yeah.
guy. Well, you can even
So,
use that in context. You could say they're trying to hide their Baneness. You know what I mean? They're trying to hide the fact that they're like Bane and they want to take power away from people. So they use these flowery words like justice and righteousness, and set up
mm,
this model. Over here, they're saying this one good thing, but they're doing these bad deeds. It's like do as I say, not as I do kind of thing, right? Think about all the corrupt politicians or whatever people at the top of systems that are spouting all this great stuff like freedom, man, we're gonna have freedom, and then they're with their that's what they're saying, but then with their actions are like taking freedom away, really.
so let's just try to use a different word to help describe it. So, these new methods despised the olden way, inventing fine names to disguise their ruin, their
Poison.
poison, their destruction,
Yeah.
their death.
Well, that not their own death or destruction, but their
Yeah, I
destruct.
get.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. That's I was trying to find a word that would be useful and I can't think of one. But yeah. Maybe their spoiled nature.
Yeah. There you go. Or their uh nefarious intentions or something like that.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, that's good.
Poison.
Their poisoned intentions.
Yeah. Amazing. And then, but simplicity in the doing of the will of every man would put an end to vain ambitions and desires. Oh, and by the way, Sarcastic Warlock was not aware that Aleister Crowley had his own version of the Tao, so I blew his mind with that. I'm like, yeah, you got to start watching these episodes, dude. Like,
Holy smokes, how did he not know that?
yeah, I don't know. I guess it's not that well known because it didn't come out till later. Maybe I don't know.
That's crazy. Yeah. I mean, I didn't know, but until I looked and
Yeah,
happened to see it.
hopping. Oh,
Yeah. So maybe we'll see or hear Sarcastic Warlock comment at some
yeah,
point.
totally.
Are
So
we ready for verse 20?
I think we are. Verse 20. All right. Oops. I lost my scroll function. There we go.
If you want, you can read two pieces at a time, maybe, I'm guessing. Or yeah, I mean, we go through it first. Never
Okay.
mind.
Yeah. So the Steve Mitchell 1988 version. Stop thinking and end your problems. What difference between yes and no? What difference between success and failure? Must you value what others value? Avoid what others avoid? How ridiculous. I love that. This reminds me of like an old Chinese guy on top of a mountain saying this, like how ridiculous. Other people,
Ridiculous.
yeah, ridiculous. How ridiculous. Other people are excited as though they were at a parade. I alone don't care. I alone am expressionless, like an infant before it can smile. Other people have what they need. I alone possess nothing. I alone drift about like someone without a home. I am like an idiot. My mind is so empty. Oh, I love that. It's like the fool, right? The fool card. Other people are bright. I alone am dark. Other people are sharper. I alone am dull. Other people have purpose. I alone don't know. I drift like a wave on the ocean. I blow as aimless as the wind. I am different from the ordinary people. I drink from the great mother's breasts. The great mother's breasts.
Hmm.
I like it.
All right. Dwight Goddard entitles this The Opposite of the Commonplace. Avoid learning if you would have no anxiety. The yes and the yay differ very little, but the contrast between good and evil is very great. That which is not feared by the people is not worth fearing. But oh, the difference, the desolation, the vastness between ignorance and the limitless expression of the Tao. Now, I will just put a caveat here and say, well, maybe caveat's not the right word, but just a note, side note. He appears to not finish the the translation. So I'm going to read his little side note that he has here. The balance of this sonnet is devoted to showing the difference between the careless state of the common people and his own vision of the Tao. It is one of the most pathetic expressions of human loneliness from lack of appreciation ever written. It is omitted here that it might serve for the closing sonnet and valedictory. Now, I am kind of confused as to what he means by that, but we can talk about it later if you wish.
Yeah, that is he like talking shit? Like what's going on here?
Yeah, that's what I don't understand. Because of course, I look at Stephen Mitchell's version, right? And I'm going, okay, he's saying other people are bright, I alone am dark. And so is this Dwight Goddard guy saying that the common people say, oh, it's bright, and that's their careless state? Oh,
Mhm.
let's see. And then his own vision. I don't know. Yeah, I guess. So I don't know. We can.
When they say his own vision, are they do they mean Dwight Goddard, or they're talking about Lao Tzu, or is Dwight talking about Lao Tzu? You think?
Oh, see, that's what I don't know. I don't know if Dwight Goddard wrote this of Lao Tzu or if somebody else wrote this of Dwight Goddard.
Hmm.
I'm assuming Dwight Goddard wrote this, but I don't know.
All right. Well, we can get back to it. I think I'm starting to get an idea of what it is, but I'm just staring at it, not talking. So
Yeah,
does,
no worries.
doesn't make good content. All right. Stan Rosenthal, 1984. Being different from ordinary men. The sage is often envived because others do not know that although he is nourished by the Tao, like them, he too is mortal. He who seeks wisdom is well advised to give up academic ways and put an end to striving. Then he will learn that yes and no are distinguished only by distinction. It is to the advantage of the sage that he does not fear what others fear, but it is to the advantage of others that they can enjoy the feasts or go walking free of hindrance through the terraced park in spring. The sage drifts like a cloud, having no specific place. Like a newborn babe before it smiles, he does not seek to communicate. In the eyes of those who have more than they need, the sage has nothing and is a fool, prizing only that which of the Tao is born. The sage may seem to be perplexed, being neither bright nor clear. And to himself, sometimes he seems both dull and weak, confused and shy. Like the ocean at night, he is serene and quiet, but as penetrating as the winter wind. It's
Mm.
very poetic, this
Mm.
version, right?
Yeah, that one very seems very poetic indeed. And Aleister Crowley entitles this The Withdrawal from the Common Way as compared to Stan Rosenthal, who calls it being different from ordinary men, and Dwight Goddard, who calls it the opposite of the commonplace. All right, we'll use that as context. Aleister Crowley, verse 20. To forget learning is to end trouble. The smallest difference in words, such as yes and yea, can make endless controversy for the scholar. Yeah.
That's an understatement.
How do you pronounce YHWH? Yahweh, Jehovah, Yahuwah?
How dare you?
Just kidding. Not kidding. Kidding, not kidding.
Sorry, not
Oh,
sorry.
right. Yeah, sorry, not sorry. Fearful indeed is death, since all men fear it. But the abyss of questionings, shoreless and bottomless, is worse. Consider the profane man, how he preeneth, I need to look that one up, as if at feast, or gazing upon spring from a tower. But as for me, I am as one who yawneth without any trace of desire. I am like a babe before its first smile. I appear sad and forlorn, like a man homeless. The profane man hath his need filled, aye, and more also. For me, I seem to have lost all I had. My mind is as it were stupefied, it hath no definite shape. The profane man looketh lively and keen-witted. I alone appear blank in my mind. They seem eagerly critical. I appear careless and without perception. I seem to be as one adrift upon the sea, with no thought of any harbor. The profane have each one his definite course of action. I alone appear useless and uncomprehending, like a man from the border.
Yeah.
Yea.
Is
Thus
that a
I differ.
Mexican joke?
I
No.
know. I was like, what? Yea, thus I differ from all other men, but my jewel is the all mother. So that little ending references that whole mother's thing from the Great Mother's Breast from Stephen Mitchell at the end. I don't think anyone else did that.
Yeah. I mean,
Just
Stan
those two.
Rosenthal or Dwight Goddard just didn't even, he,
He didn't even try.
like, my dog ate my homework last night. Thanks, Dwight. All right, let's get into breaking this down so then we could talk about it more. All right, so stop thinking and end your problems. What difference between yes and no? What difference between success and failure? Must you value what others value? Avoid what others avoid? How ridiculous. I'll read the second part too.
Yeah, that's fine.
Other people are excited as though they were at a parade. I alone don't care. I alone am expressionless. Like an infant before it can smile. Other people have what they need. I alone possess nothing. I alone drift about like someone without a home. I am like an idiot. My mind is so empty. So again, like I said a little earlier, the idiot thing is kind of like the fool uh archetype, I guess you could say, right? And we were talking about this yesterday. I was talking about this with Sarcastic Warlock, where when we first individually got on our voyage through truth and all this stuff, we wanted to appear like we knew it all. We were like afraid to look stupid in front of people. And we both came to the realization that it doesn't matter how we look in front of people and all that stuff. That's not what really matters. It's not the important thing. It's more about, you know, how you feel, right? Do you feel like you're a victim in this situation? Or when something happens, is it the end of your plans in your whole world because you wanted this to happen this way and it didn't? Or are you just going to kind of drift around like a fool? And as I was saying before, this whole verse in all the versions, really, though, I think this verse is very poetic, especially in the Stephen Mitchell version. And I love the whole thing with stop thinking and end your problems. It's like they talk about like quieting the mind. And then when it gets into what difference between yes and no, what difference between success and failure, it's kind of like it reminds me of the Kabbalion when they talk about scales, like where does hot end and or where
Mm,
does heat end and cold begin? It's just a
mm,
measurement on a scale. It's the same kind of thing. And really, also with the yes and no, when you're waiting for somebody to say yes or no, it's because you want them to say one thing or another, right? You want them to say yes to this, or you want them to say no. So again, we're going back to not trusting the plan, right? You're not trusting the divine infinite plan of God or the creator, however you want to look at it. You're more interested in what's going to work out for you and your plans. And so you are waiting for the yes or no. Whereas somebody who is just kind of living in accordance with the Tao and going along with all this stuff, it doesn't really matter if it's a yes or a no. They're gonna be okay anyway. They know that they're gonna make it through no matter what happens. There's a reason for it, and they're gonna accept it. I think it's really more about acceptance, you know. But I guess you could say, what difference between yes and no? Maybe in court, it's gonna work out a lot if the person didn't say yes and they said no. But I think again, looking at it this poetically, it's not like the guy's saying, no doesn't mean no. It doesn't matter what they say, right? It's more about how does it affect you internally when things don't go your way and you hit a wall, you hit a no when you thought somebody was going to say yes. Like when my brother's car ran out of when his truck ran out of gas, it was like no, like no more. And obviously, there's a big difference that you could point out. But what he means is like, really, when it comes down to it, what's the difference? It's going to happen that way anyway. You can accept it or you cannot accept it. And I feel like that interpretation, I guess I could say, kind of follows it all along here when it talks about like other people are excited as though they were at a parade. I alone don't care. I am expressionless. And I'm looking at this like, it's not like if you're a Taoist or you're following Tao, you can't have a good time and you can't enjoy yourself and you can't have fun and be excited. But what it's saying is like, no matter what happens internally, you're not going to have a reaction to it, right? You're just going to, or what he's saying, that's how he is as the master, right? The master just doesn't, just kind of accepts it, goes with the flow.
yeah, absolutely. And I was also thinking balanced, because you could see it both ways. You could see like, yes, it's enjoyable. People are having a good time, but then there are also people maybe who aren't having a good time because of whatever reason. Maybe their pet just died. Maybe their family member just died or something, and they're sad or they're upset about something that just happened. So um coming in with a balanced view and a balanced approach, I think, is how I'm seeing it too.
Yeah. And, the last thing I'll say about it reminds me of when they say like do your work and then forget about it. Don't be attached to the results of your actions, just do the actions. It's kind of the same thing, I think, just coming at it from a little more of a poetic standpoint. So,
Yeah.
all right. So,
Well, I will read the Dwight Goddard and note here again that weirdness. I'm not quite sure where that begins. I'm assuming because it was hard to comprehend what he was translating. So that's why I kind of broke it up into three pieces. But um the balance of the sonnet, it probably starts with other people are excited, right there where Stephen Mitchell starts with that. That's what I'm guessing. So
okay.
I'll read all of this up until the note.
Okay.
So
Yeah, it makes sense.
avoid learning if you would have no anxiety. The yes and the yea differ very little, but the contrast between good and evil is very great. Um, I'll keep reading. That which is not feared by the people is not worth fearing, but oh, the difference, the desolation, the vastness between ignorance and the limitless expression of the Tao. So I'll start with the contrast between good and evil is very great. That uh what are your thoughts on that? Because is it kind of like you were saying with the spectrum of like what were you saying when something is
Oh, it's
Like,
like
oh,
on a
like the
scale.
Kabbalion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I could see that it's like on a scale, but I think right here what he's saying is the yes and the yeah differ very little, but the contrast between good and evil is very great. So I think they're kind of saying like not to get wrapped up in the exact words and all this stuff, but also just be conscious of the contrast between good and evil. It's hard for me to kind of
Okay.
put it into
No,
words.
I get what you're, I think I get what you're trying to say. Like there are things that you can say, oh, there's very little difference in these two things, but when you're talking about good and evil, the spectrum is great. Like from something that is good versus something that's evil, the spectrum is much bigger than those uh than something like the between yes and yay, because it's literally one letter different, but it means the same thing.
Yeah, yeah. It's crazy how different these versions are
I
within the.
know. This one like was very hard for me to like put together because I'm like, where do I break up? How do I break this up? It was so hard.
And
Anyway, that which is not feared by the people is not worth fearing. I mean, clearly, right?
I'm just
But
trying to.
I'm not quite sure what you mean, what he's trying to say by that underhandedly.
Yeah, yeah, right. It is very confusing. But oh, the difference, the desolation, the vastness between ignorance and the limitless expression of the Tao. So I think what he's trying to say is it kind of looks the same. Uh, the ignorance and limitless expression of the Tao. Maybe the person kind of even acts some of the same ways, but just internally it's totally different because you're coming at it from a whole different way. So you might be what's the word I'm looking for? You might have a lot of apathy for something, but it doesn't mean that it's good. You're just kind of ignoring it, pretending it doesn't exist, but it's still going to bother you on some level. Whereas when you're whereas compared to the limitless expression of the Tao, it's a much different thing.
Yeah, this is such a deep verse 20, and Dwight Goddard, you really lost me here.
Yeah, good job, Dwight. Baron Strawberry. Oh, but I am. What's going on, Baron
He's
Strawberry? What's up?
drinking whiskey.
Oh,
He said
nice.
whiskey and Dow, classic combination.
Oh, yeah. I
Could
like
it
it.
be?
What's up, Cody?
Cody might be drinking whiskey too. I think they egged each other on in the chat. They're in a chat group together. So.
Oh, nice. Good on you. Well, that's the thing about the Tao, right? As opposed to all the other different religions of the world. Like, there's nothing wrong with drinking according to the Tao as long as you do it in balance, right? Everything's about balance.
Awareness, intention, all that.
Totally.
Shall we hit Stan Rosenthal?
Yes. Let's get away from this other one. It's crazy. Maybe we'll have some clarity after we read this.
I know.
And if you guys at home have anything to add, please leave a comment. What do you think we missed here in this episode? I mean, in the verse, like what's going on? Um, being different from ordinary men, the sage is often envived because others do not know that all.
Envied.
Oh, the sage is often envied because Brandon can't read. No, the sage is often envied because others do not know that although he is nourished by the Tao, like them, he too is mortal. He who seeks wisdom is well advised to give up academic ways and put an end to striving. Then he will learn that yes and no are distinguished only by distinction. And so we could just start talking about this right here. I like how he's putting this because he's kind of saying what they were saying about the learning, um, to give up academic ways if you really want to get wisdom and put an end to striving. So it's more, again, it's because when you're striving and when you're trying to do things, you're not doing it. It's just like the Jedi, right? Yoda, he says, right, there is no try. There's only do or do not.
Do.
Like try is an illusion. So when you're out there striving and trying really hard, you're going against the current and you're kind of coming out of balance. Now, again, this doesn't mean that you shouldn't try to do things and work hard and strive or any of this stuff, but it's a specific it's like a specific point they're talking about here when it comes to wisdom exactly, because wisdom I don't think could really be learned from a book, or you can't study all day to try to get wise. You have to live through things, have experience, and gain insight, like we were saying earlier, maybe even have a near death experience, and then you could get some wisdom because you see how the world really works and you open up your point of view and your worldview changes a little bit. So that's what I believe he's talking about right here. And this is where the new
Yeah.
age people might screw you up with words and be like, oh, you don't got to try. You just sit around all day and do nothing. It's great. Right. Um, and it says that the sage is often envied because others do not know that although he is nourished by the Tao, like them, he too is mortal. So people might think that these holy men
It
are,
must be nice to be a sage.
yeah, and be immortal, right? That's what it is. It's exactly what it is. Um, all right, I'll read the second part then. It is to the advantage of the sage that he does not fear what others fear. Oh, so we'll
Yeah,
go
you
back up
I
to
don't
where,
think you have it showing on the screen right now.
oh yeah, you're right. Good call. Because I'm gonna bring it back, y'all. Because, all right, so here we go. It says, it is to the advantage of the sage that he does not fear what others fear. And then we'll scroll up to here where it says, that which is
Oh,
not feared by the people is not worth fearing.
there you go.
Hmm.
Therein lies the same verse.
Yeah.
That's probably why I separated out because I probably noticed that.
Oh, good job. But it is to the, so I'm going to continue here with the second part of Stan Rosenthal, his interpretation. It is to the advantage of the sage that he does not fear what others fear, but it is to the advantage of others that they can enjoy the feast or go walking free of hindrance through the terraced park in spring. Hmm. So I think what he's saying is like, when you know these things, you can't just kind of go and engage in escapism, right? You can't just go be ignorant and have fun. Like that might be the disadvantage of the sage. That's maybe people who aren't sages can say that, right? They could say, oh, well, I could just drift around free of hindrance through the terrace park in spring. Like it's not even a big deal. But the sage drifts like a cloud, having no specific place. Oh,
Like
that's
a homeless. That the other Aleister Crowley
yeah.
says homeless. I remember.
Yeah, I like that because they're saying like people that aren't the sage, they have plans and they go and do things with everyone else, but the sage kind of just drifts along, right? He doesn't have any expectations of what's going on.
Go
And
with the flow.
it's this is very poetic, so you can look at this in like just an internal sense. You might internally, if you're not a quote unquote sage, you might have all these plans and try to do what everyone else does, go to the park, eat a feast, all these things. But in, like I said, internally, so you have all these different plans and ideas and all these different expectations. And when they're not met, you're going to get very upset. But the sage,
Doesn't get
like a
upset.
cloud, right? Having no specific place, like a newborn babe before it smiles, he does not seek to communicate. In the eyes of those who have more than they need, the sage has nothing and is a fool, prizing only that which of the Tao is born.
Mm.
I wasn't sharing it again either. Sorry, guys. We'll go back to it. I'll pull it up, and then yeah, because this part, it's the same kind of thing they're saying in the Stephen Mitchell version, just a little bit more wordier, I guess you could say, right? He does not seek to communicate, so he's not trying to tell everybody how he feels about everything and how the way he thinks it should be and all this stuff. He's just in a early state of like a state of openness, right? Potentiality,
Mm. Mm.
no plan.
Observing
Yeah,
and taking. and information. Yeah.
And I like how
And
they,
not being judgmental, I think, either.
yeah,
So
yep, yeah.
this is reminding me of MBTI because I've been digging into a little bit more deeply. And it's like a it's MBTI is about how you observe the world and how you make decisions about the world. And you have the judgment and the perception aspect to it in the P and the J at the very end of the four letters. So it's reminding me of that a little bit. Joe's been uh DMing me about MBTI stuff because he knows a little bit more than I do. So he's been helping me out as I look into it more deeply. But yeah.
Oh, nice. Maybe we should do a Myers-Briggs episode then.
Ooh, that would be fun.
That would be interesting. Hmm.
That would be fun. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um, Let me just bring this up. Yeah, that's so true that the first thing is to realize that not everybody sees the world through the same eyes you do. And he uses here in the eyes of those who have more than they need.
Mm, mm,
Right. So to these people, the people that have more than they need, the sage has nothing and is a fool. So they're gonna,
mm.
so that's it. It even
Wow.
kind of shows why people wouldn't want to follow the Tao, right? On first instincts, if they're looking at these people who are quote unquote Taoists or following the Tao, or who are the masters or the sage. It's like this guy's got nothing though, but he's just he doesn't know what the hell's going on. Or you can even look at it as opposed somebody has a mind frame of a minimalist, opposed to like a normal materialistic person. They're gonna be like, this guy's crazy. What do you mean he only has like a bag of things that he takes? He doesn't have like, nice things, or he doesn't have like a car or a
Yeah,
couch or TV or
yeah.
whatever it is, right?
Like people who live in like giant mansions and like you see their homes, or you pass by their home and their windows, show, and you can look inside and you're just like, wow, like that their home is like amazing. It's like a museum almost, you know what I mean? And I'm speaking from experience because Cody and I went to kind of this like kind of more ritzy part of the neighborhood
Ooh.
when we were looking for Halloween decorations at night just to see them and lights and stuff like that. And we were in that part of the neighborhood, and we saw inside some really beautiful, gorgeous homes. And I get back home and I'm like, my walls are bare, and I'm like, but I kind of like it that way because it's like not complicated. There's not a lot of stuff, and yet there is stuff that I still need to clear out. But yeah, I just imagine that is so much more complicated, and I don't know. It's a lot.
Yeah, I could see that 100%. It's tough when you have a lot of stuff and think about why people accumulate possessions. Why, like, I used to shop for clothes a lot more than I do now. And it just kind of made me feel good, right? To have, I'm not saying you shouldn't have new stuff or whatever, but I had just an overabundance, way too much stuff. And it just became complicated because then you're like, well, what am I going to do with all this stuff? And then if you have stuff and it breaks, you got to fix it, and you have all these other obligations which are
Mhm.
just taking up RAM space in your
Mm.
head, right?
In your life, in your
In your life
head.
too. Yeah, it's taking up all this space.
Indeed. Shall I read Aleister Crowley?
Yeah, let me bring it up.
All right. Aleister Crowley, verse 20. I'll read that first, the first two pieces there. To forget learning is to end trouble. The smallest difference in words such as yes and yea can make endless controversy for the scholar. And I believe I said something earlier about that. Fearful indeed is death, since all men fear it. But the abyss of questionings, shoreless and bottomless, is worse. Consider the profane man, how he preeneth as if at feast, or gazing upon spring from a tower. But as for me, I am as one who yawneth without any trace of desire. I am like a babe before its first smile. I appear sad and forlorn, like a man homeless. The profane man hath his need filled, I and more also. For me, I seem to have lost all I had. My mind is as it were stupefied. It hath no definite shape. So yeah, as I said earlier, the yay and the yes, it just kind of reminded me of when people fight about the name of God and how it's pronounced. And I just find it so ridiculous and silly because, if God is God, then he knows his name in every language. And if you accidentally don't even know how to pronounce it, I'm sure that's okay. Um,
Or you could go to hell, it's a big risk. Uh, I think Aleister Crowley nails it here the best with the yay and the yeah thing,
yeah.
the way he puts it, it's great. And something else that came across to me as you're reading this, maybe this verse 20 is kind of like summing up all what we've learned in the previous 19 verses, right? This is kind of like they
Could.
put Lao Tzu or whoever put this in here as kind of like a recap, but it's like this poetic thing because everything that we've talked about before is kind of mentioned in this verse. Well, maybe not everything, but a lot of the different ideas and I guess you could say like the different lessons or whatever they're trying to get across to you is in here. It's kind of like showing you how you would live if you were living in accordance with all this the first 19 verses at least, because it has a lot to do with like attachment, it seems to me, right? And like how you feel about what others think about you, how you feel about your work and all this stuff and things you've done. So it is
Let it
possible maybe that's why
go.
it's so poetic.
I was gonna sing the Let It Go part again.
Let it
Yeah,
go.
it does. So there's that verse there, that piece that says, "Fearful indeed is death, since all men fear it, but the abyss of questionings, shoreless and bottomless, is worse." What do you gather from that?
I think that he is talking about
What we just talked about with the controversy for the scholar?
yeah, that yeah. I think that fits it perfectly because you can go back and forth with all these things, but there's no like definite answer, right? It's shoreless.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, it's like, oh, these people say it's pronounced Yahweh, and these people say it's pronounced Yahuwah, and these people over here say no, it's Jehovah. And everybody has their own way, and they have their own proof and their own evidence for their proof. But no, who's right? No one.
Yeah, it's there's no way to actually prove who's exactly
Exactly.
right because you're
Exactly.
arguing about the name of God, which some people will say that God doesn't even exist. You know what I mean? Like,
God can't be named. Could it
yeah,
be?
yeah, yeah. So when you're arguing about the name of the nameless thing, you're probably in trouble, right? Not in trouble as like with in trouble with somebody, but you're gonna hit this shoreless, bottomless ocean. And you're just gonna float around and spin in
Yeah.
circles all day.
And it reminds me of the first verse of the Tao that says it cannot be named.
Exactly.
Oh my
That's why they
God.
opened with
Okay.
that, I think.
Exact. Good point. Consider the profane man how he preeneth. Okay, let's see what it means to preen. Do you know?
I think it means to like it's like if I was sitting
Um,
here preening my mustache and then I'm just preening it, I'm like,
oh, to trim or dress with the beak or the tongue. Oh, interesting. To dress oneself carefully or smartly, to pride oneself on an achievement or a personal quality, etc. Okay, so consider the profane man how he preeneth as if at feast. Okay.
so he's like getting ready, like he's like, I gotta look good, I gotta make sure my hair is nice, I gotta,
Yeah.
everything's gotta be, this hair's out of place, like you're preening because you're,
Oh, yeah. The other verb that is used without an object, because that was used with an object, um, is to make oneself appear striking or smart in dress or appearance, or to be exultant or proud. So
mm,
how he preeneth, he's like very proud, as if he were at a feast. And gazing upon spring from a tower, like instead of actually being experiencing that actual spring, the beautiful flowers and the grass, and you're just on a tower looking down on it. Like, how are you experiencing that? Right?
Yeah, exactly. You're not walking the walk, you're just looking like it. You're a poser, basically, is what they're saying.
Yeah. Aha.
Aha.
So the profane man is a poser.
That's right.
But as for me, I am as one who yawneth. Okay, so is he saying, as for me, who is a sage?
Hmm.
Like I am the master. I am as one who yawns. I'm just gonna say that word without any trace of desire, like a babe before its first smile. I appear sad and forlorn like a man homeless. The profane man hath his need filled, I and more also. That reminds me of the scripture. I think I mentioned it earlier, but where Jesus, I think, says that if you seek, for people to like look upon you and dote upon you and just be like, oh, you're great, or look, you gave X amount of dollars to some charity, you're such a great guy or great fellow. He says, Jesus said, people like that already have their reward, because what is their reward? For men to applaud them, that's the reward. But if you do it without seeking that reward, your Father in heaven will reward you, and it'll be the way God wants to reward you, right? But this other way is just like, all you're going to get is like, oh, some dude going, yeah, you did great. And what kind of reward is that? Like, is that what you want? Or do you prefer God to reward you in the
Yeah.
only, and like the best way that God could do it? You know what I mean?
And I like how he's saying he yawns. So picture two guys at a feast. One guy's making sure everything's in place and looking good and like looking at the women and all this stuff. And this other guy's just like, I'm bored with this. He's like, oh, whatever. I have to be here. It's the same.
Yeah, exactly.
Love it.
Yeah. For me, I seem to have lost all I had. My mind is as it were stupefied. It hath no definite shape. Okay. Well, that is Aleister Crowley. And do you want to read the second part,
Yeah. Let me put it
verse
up.
20?
All right. Stephen Mitchell, 1988 version. The last part here. Other people are bright. I alone am dark. Other people are sharper. I alone am dull. Other people have a purpose. I alone don't know. I drift like a wave on the ocean. I blow as aimless as the wind. I am different from ordinary people. I drink from the great mother's breasts. How
Hmm.
pornographic, Stephen Mitchell. So I think here what he's talking about is like with the preening thing, other people try to be sharp, they appear smart, or other people try to they say they have a purpose. And this isn't like the Dharma thing. I think it's not trying to say that you shouldn't have a Dharma and do your Dharma or whatever, but if you really are truly following your Dharma, it's following God's plan. So you really don't know. Well, some people think that they have a purpose here, whatever it is, and then something happens and it gets flipped totally upside down, and then they're left with nothing. Whereas he is just like, I don't have a purpose. I'm just here to do my work and take every day one step at a time. I think a
I
lot of
love that.
this verse is doing is like telling you to get rid of your expectations or to not be so married to your expectations. It's
Mm,
good to have expectations of what you want to happen when you're working with something, say like art, for example, right? Or whatever it is. But if it doesn't come out the way that you wanted it to, is it going to ruin your whole day? Is it going to ruin your whole year? Or are you going to go into depression or are you just going to come back stronger? It's like
indeed.
the difference between success and failure. I love that part because what's the difference between success and failure? If you fail, you just get back up and do it again, and then you can succeed and you can actually learn something. It's just like stand up comedy. When if you go on stage and you bomb, you don't do well, You could get depressed about it and you could quit comedy and you could, write a whole blog and cry on Facebook. Or you could just say, all right, what did I do wrong? What can I do better next time to make it work out better? You know, it's just in the mind, the difference between success and failure. That's something that
Mm,
just happened, right? So something occurs and then we want to put a label on it. That was success. That was failure. No, that's just something that fucking happened, man.
happened.
Like you can deal with it how you want, right? And again, the lines here are very thin because you could get into the apathetic mode where you're just like, oh, I don't care. Fuck them. They just don't understand me. As a comedian, they don't get my humor. And you could just stay rigid and stubborn, right? Just like the persistence thing. What was it in the beginning when you read how it wasn't persistence, it was the other one that is not rigid, right? What was the word that they used in the cards that we read?
Endurance. Oh,
Endurance.
endurance.
Yeah, it's that same thing, right? Endurance isn't rigid. So it's not
It's
like you're being
flexible.
stubborn, you're being flexible. And if you really want to endure and become a successful comedian or whatever, you're going to have to
It's not from being
work
rigid.
on it. Yeah, exactly.
It is from being flexible, anticipating that anything can happen and going with the flow with it.
Exactly. And I think we all know what it means to drink from the great mother's breasts. So
Do
we can
we?
move on. I don't know. Well, we could talk about that more when we get to the Aleister Crowley thing because I think he
He
defines
says
it.
something kind of
Yeah, he has a little
similar. So,
clarity to that situation. All right, I'll bring it back up so you can read this.
so
Go ahead.
Dwight Goddard omits the ending or the rest of kind of, I would say, the second half of this verse. And I'll read the little comment. Now, as Brandon and I said earlier, we don't know if he wrote it or if somebody wrote it as a note, as a side note, but I think he wrote it.
Yeah, I think he did. Now that I'm reading it again, it makes more sense.
So it says the balance of this sonnet is devoted to showing the difference between the careless state of the common people and his own vision of the Tao. And when we say his own, I'm thinking he means Lao Tzu or the master, could it be?
Mm-hmm.
It is one of the most pathetic expressions of human loneliness from lack of appreciation ever written. And I don't know if he's trash talking Lao Tzu or the master right here, but it seems that way. Um, it is omitted here that it might serve for the closing sonnet and valedictory. And a valedictory is like, I think I defined it before
So
when I
maybe
was reading this.
maybe
The farewell, the goodbye.
Dwight Goddard put this part at the end of the whole Tao. He took it out here so he could put it to the as the ending of his Tao.
You mean as the end of this verse 20, which was kind of a summary of all of the
No, I
before?
mean
Or
like, well, because he said he omitted it. Let's see. It is omitted here that it might serve for the closing sonnet and valedictory. So maybe he means it's been omitted here so it could be put at the end of the entire Tao.
oh, interesting.
Very interesting. And let's read this again where it says, um, the balance of the sonnet is devoted to showing the okay. It is one of the most pathetic expressions of human loneliness from lack of appreciation ever written. So he's just saying it's an expression here, right? So that's what he's talking about. It's a expression of human loneliness.
Hmm.
So yeah, I don't know if he's being negative here or not, but maybe
Yeah.
he's saying that it's one of the most pathetic expressions of human loneliness. So that's why he's trying to highlight it at the end. Maybe he's not really exactly talking shit, but I think he's talking about um the most
A pathetic expression from lack of appreciation. So maybe he's saying that the common people are so lonely, but because they don't appreciate life or something like that.
yeah. Yeah, so maybe he's trying to say that Lao Tzu is trying to convey one of the most pathetic expressions of human loneliness from lack of appreciation ever written.
Yeah,
Something
maybe.
like that. Or
Okay.
maybe he's talking smack, you know? I mean, we're gonna have to guess we'll never know. This guy's definitely dead, I'm sure, right? And so is
Yeah.
Lao Tzu, so I guess we'll never know.
Well, shall we go to Stan Rosenthal?
Yeah, let's do it.
He's, I mean, from the way I broke it down, it seems that this is the little last little bit, so it's kind of short.
The sage may seem to be perplexed, being neither bright nor clear, and to himself sometimes he seems both dull and weak, confused and shy. Like the ocean at night, he is serene and quiet, but as penetrating as the winter wind.
Hmm. It's funny because I feel like I'll let you in a second. Sorry.
Yeah, no, man.
I feel like the other one, because Dwight didn't say anything about it. Um, but Stephen Mitchell's is like other people, I am. But he doesn't seem, Stan Rosenthal doesn't really do that. So it's kind of interesting how he kind of formulates this part of the verse.
Yeah, he only uses his own example, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So the sage may seem to be perplexed. So, from others' point of view, he might seem to be perplexed, being neither bright nor clear. And to himself, sometimes he seems both dull and weak, confused and shy. So, I think it's okay to
He's
feel this
merging the
way.
two, I think.
Yeah.
He's kind of merging the common people with the master, right? Or not.
Or maybe when compared to, like when compared to other people, the sage may seem to be perplexed, being neither bright nor clear. And to himself, when compared to other people, sometimes he seems both dull and weak,
Okay.
maybe confused and shy, like the ocean at night. Yeah, this is a little confusing, but
Yeah, it's
I
an
think it's fun to see how you
interesting
answer it,
verse
right?
number 20. So I read, are you done or shall I read Aleister
Now
Crowley?
let's bring up Aleister Crowley because then we could try to make sense of all this together, maybe.
All right. So last piece of verse 20, Aleister Crowley says, "The profane man looketh lively and keen-witted. I alone appear blank in my mind." Now he uses the I alone again. And he says the profane man, um, what does Stephen Mitchell says? He says, other people. And then Dwight Goddard says the common people, I think. So the profane man looketh lively and keen-witted. I alone appear blank in my mind. They seem eagerly critical. I appear careless and without perception. I seem to be as one adrift upon the sea with no thought of a harbor. The profane have each one, the profane have each one his definite course of action. I alone appear useless and uncomprehending, like a man from the border. Not sure what
Mm-hmm.
that means yet.
I think it
Yea,
just means like a man from another. You're going to appear useless and uncomprehending, just like someone maybe speaks another language or from another land.
okay. Yea, thus I differ from all other men, but my jewel is the All Mother.
So I think really like at the essence of all this, it's kind of distinguishing the difference of a sage or somebody who kind of gets it about the Tao or a master as compared to a normal person. And I think they're just trying to break them down all in their own ways. And they're really trying to highlight the fact that you're gonna appear all these different ways. Like you're gonna appear dull and all this stuff, right? But you're more like an ocean, just kind of floating around, just letting things
Yeah.
happen and dealing with them as they happen instead of having all these plans and expectations and stuff. That's really like the core
Yeah.
of what I get out of
Good
all of
point.
this.
Yeah, you're gonna look like you're weird, like you're odd, like you don't know what you're doing, like you don't know what you're talking about. You must be crazy. That's
And
what you're gonna look like.
we're even boring, right? That's the
Yeah,
superpower of
that
our
too.
show, right? We people think we're what we talk about is boring sometimes if they don't get it, which is great because then they just
So
leave us
we have a
alone.
curated crowd, dare I
Yeah,
say.
exactly. Awesome.
Yay.
Endurance. Oh, thanks, Spoons. That was from earlier. Yes. When I was thinking of the word, she popped it into the chat. All right, everybody. Well,
Yes.
we
We're
hope you.
3 minutes from the 2 hour mark.
Oh, okay. Perfect. Let's see what it says we've been going for because I think we started a little late.
Oh,
155.
did we?
Yeah, a couple minutes late. So we're at
Oh, okay.
155.15 right now or 20. Oh, it goes every 5 seconds. Oh, thanks, Google. The counter on Google Live only goes up every 5 seconds. That's hilarious
It's ridiculous.
from the
It's
dashboard that I
ridiculous.
right. They can't afford the extra seconds in there. It's like we gotta show you by fives. Just it's just an estimate, guys. It's an estimate. You don't need an exact second count, do you? I guess we don't, but thank you guys though for hanging out with us and trying to get through this with the Dow. If you're listening to this right now and you have some insight, fill us in. Maybe you disagree with what we said, or you can add to what we said. Leave it in a comment. Let us know what you think. I think, like I said, it's very poetic, and poetry is really. It's supposed to be. It's like a communication from one person to another individualistically. Like it hits everybody in a different way. So I think we got the gist of it, though.
Yeah. This verse was especially difficult.
Yeah, maybe it's like that for a reason. But
Yeah.
I feel like I do understand
The
what they're
gist of
trying
it.
to convey with the
Yeah.
gist of
Yeah.
this verse. Yeah,
It's just that they all interpreted it in differently enough that it was like, wait,
And it's funny too. I said at the beginning with this Stephen Mitchell verse, the end of it, where he says, "Oh wait, that was verse 19.
was it
Never
verse
mind."
19?
Yep. Oops. I was just gonna say how it was like so concise, but
Yeah.
uh, but it looks like Dwight Goddard though took this and might have put it at the end, like as the closing sonnet. I guess we'll find out as we keep going along
Yes, we
if we're
will.
late back.
Indeed.
Awesome. All right, everybody. Well, I don't know if you're aware of this, but my Tarot Bull podcast has started again. So go check that out. TAROTBULL.com. And every Tuesday, Ashley and I put out a episode about the tarot. We talk about different cards. Right now, we're talking about different decks. Each week we choose a different deck to talk about and pull out some cards. And then also Brandon Bonanza. I just did a show with Sarcastic Warlock, and I've been trying to get those out a little more regularly. So check those out. And then also, of course, the Over Sharon show. If you haven't caught up on
Who
your
could
Over Sharon,
forget?
especially the Dow series, we have a whole playlist on YouTube that's just Over Sharon the Dow, basically. So go through there, let us know what you think, check it out. The Dow's helped me immensely in my life by looking at this. And again, I'm not a Taoist. I don't like to be any kind of ist of anything, but I just like to look at these old religious scriptures and kind of, or however you want to call them, right? Old religion or whatever,
Old texts.
old text, and just kind of glean some information or knowledge or wisdom. But then again, according to the Tao, I shouldn't even do this, right? I should just hang out like an ocean or a river. But I guess I'm not a sage yet, but we're working on it, everybody. Um, but yeah, is there anything you wanted to say, Sharon?
I don't think so.
Verses. Yeah, I think it's cool that we got to this 20 because I feel like it is some kind of this verse 20 is some kind of like recap on everything that we've learned. And it's a little, like I said, extra poetic. So it's
Yeah, it did feel that way.
yeah, cool. All right. Well, the website is morelawsmoreproblems.com. Go there, click on the Over Sharon tab, and all the several ways to support us are there. But the best way to support us is to come hang out in the chat, just like Joe and Spoons and Baron Strawberry and Cody and Blue Kachina and all these fun people that were in here. Giuseppe at the beginning said, "What's up?" Yes, subscribe, hit
Giuseppe.
like, comment, let us know what you think. Give us some love, give us your ideas, and that I really believe is the best way to support us. And stay tuned for more oversharing loveliness and more oversharing about the Tao because we still have a bunch of verses to go through. Everybody, not like we're going to do it every week, but we're going to do it when we don't have a guest or another topic. So we're just going to keep going.
Yeah. How many
And
verses are there? Is it like 80 or
72.
is it really like a deck of cards?
I
Is that
want to
70?
say,
Oh no, not the 78.
how
Really?
many? Let's ask Google
I think it's like
verses
80.
in the Tao.
I mean,
81.
so
I was
yeah,
by
we're
nine.
a are we a quarter of the way done then?
Yeah, we're about a
Mm,
quarter of the way. Yeah,
there
nice.
we go. And then we'll pick a new book.
Yeah, I can't wait. We're gonna go
Mm.
through Lord of the Rings. I'm just kidding, verse by verse. What do you think he means here when he said no? Yeah, there's so many of these though. Like I was yesterday, I said this with Sark. I was like, we plan to do this and then other books, and I'm like, we can probably even cover the Havamal. I mean, I think that would be cool to do.
Yeah,
So,
that one's gonna be tough for me. I don't really know a lot of Norse mythology type stuff,
well,
so
maybe we'll
I'll
have to get somebody in on it, like
have
Baldur's
to
or something.
brush up,
Yeah.
learn about that.
All righty. Now we're definitely over the 2 hour mark. Thank you guys for sticking around. And I guess we could say, what do we say to the good people, Sharon?
But once you start oversharing,
And you totally stop being a Karen.
that's right.
That's right. Remember, we're not telling you how to live.
But maybe just how to live a little more simply.
That's right. And until next week, keep living simply, everybody, and we'll see you later. Bye.
Absolutely. Ciao.
Ciao, ciao. All right, we are done.